So 16th of February, good to have you with us. Welcome to Number of the Day. Hope you had a good Valentine's weekend. You didn't break the bank when it comes to expensive Valentine's gifts. Now, the number of today is a big one. 25 million and some change. And Francis heard, I would not have associated, and maybe this is my bias, I would not have associated good news and 25 million and some change with Telkom, but the subscribers are loving them.
Yeah, so Telkom now has more than 25 million subscribers for the first time, digital, mobile subscribers, and it's got 25.3. And I like that you use that word change because to me, now look, it's been a long history, right? Telkom has been listed for a long time. It's the old monopoly fixed line operator, but it shows that things can change. And I remember, I was young, but I remember those fixed lines. I remember that people hated Telkom. they hated Telkom because the monopoly was just the pit.
Okay.
No, I did have a nice, I think it was like a Purple Heart phone. You remember you could get funky phones for a while?
I do remember those.
Yeah, and that was beautiful. But I remember Telkom not doing its job. I think that was the sentiment, right?
I think the anger came from the fact that when we were younger, well, I'm going to say when I was younger, I'll never speak on behalf of Francis, is that Telkom really, back in the day when you still had dial-up internet, I think it's how the kids said it back in the day. So what happened is if you were using your computer at home for research purposes and mom was on the phone, I couldn't do my homework and have mom on the phone because it would just cut either the internet
or the... Were you really doing your homework?
I really was doing my homework. I promise you I was fastidious. I can guarantee you I have witnesses to attest to that. And I think that's where my association with Telkom came in. They were not a very good, back in the day, fixed line provider, but to be fair, if you look at the numbers from the mobile side, and this is why the change is so important, you think of mobile providers, you have Vodacom, you have MTN, you have Cell C, for example. But if you go take a look at the numbers, just prepaid, which is what you're talking about, the list that I have puts Telkom at number 3 with the 25.3 million, Vodacom 39.2, MTN 29.4, 3 is Telkom, beating Cell C. So old fixed line technology moving into a new world.
Yes, and prepaid is, look, we're talking about being old. I was speaking to young people and they have a different idea about Telkom because they say they remember the great packages that Telkom has offered in terms of data, right? So that's what Telkom has done and it's been a complete change. Prepaid is a little bit difficult, I think, for the companies because, you know, people can dump prepaid anytime or not use their SIM cards. But this is where Telkom is mostly operating. Prepaid subscribers, this was in the 3 months to December, up by 6% to 22.2 million. So mostly prepaid. Postpaid only up by 1% to 3.1 million. So there's a lot of prepaid subscribers there, but that's where there's a lot of competition. Cell C trying to get in there, trying to move those numbers up. But this is a wonderful story because the state owned Telkom. It was an apartheid company. It came out of I was looking, the Department of Posts and Telecoms. And
there was a Department of Post and Telecoms?
And out of that came Telkom and the SA Post Office. And look at the difference now.
Yes.
Because government had a vested stake, but this was listed. It was listed on the JSE. It was listed in New York. So government is a main shareholder and then it gave up its shareholding in 2024. It's now back there through the PIC. So government owns about 40%. With the PIC holdings, it's over 50%. So government is still the holder here, but essentially Telkom has had to compete. It's been exposed to the breezes of the market and it's done well. And I remember it was going down. Sipho Maseko came in, a CEO who did a wonderful job, but there were job cuts. He restructured. Things were happening that had never happened before in a state-owned company. It's still called a state-owned company. And now it went through hard times again, but in the last year, up more than 60%, the share price, because it's restructuring. And yeah, Telkom Telkom is an amazing story.
They are an amazing story, but I can't help but wonder if part of that amazing story, if you were to start dividing into the chapters of Telkom, is because of how long they've been around and those fixed lines that you and I were talking about. That's that, and I hope I get the terminology right, it's that backbone infrastructure that Telkom had, because at one point they were the monopoly, those physical cables under the ground going into your house. Remember when the telephone was still stuck to the kitchen wall? It was one of those. That later became the backbone of what many, many fiber networks are using today. I think they call it the last mile, that the fiber networks, the Vumas of the world, the AfriHosts of the world, and there's many more, they plugging in predominantly into the Telkom infrastructure. So Telkom was already in the trenches, with no pun intended.
So, and this is going to be interesting, I think, to compare to what happens to Eskom, right? Because Telkom is still saying it is South Africa's digital backbone.
It is.
So because it had that back-end infrastructure, it then provided the service to all the other service providers that did that last mile or whatever to our homes. Yeah. And then the regulators had to come up with interesting ways of doing this, because I remember everybody said, well, if Telkom owns the back end and now Telkom through OpenServe starts offering fiber, of course it's going to have an advantage, and it's going to offer you something cheaper, better, because it can more easily get into that back end. But they've found a way around this. And OpenServe is in homes. So it goes that last mile. It's in 1.5 million homes. But the regulators have found a way for there to be competition, beautiful competition. But Telkom is still this digital backbone. And I think we can, basically wrap it up.
We can, but before we do that, I also want to just mention as well, I think this is important because, and you can talk about the numbers on this, if Telkom is growing, it means they're taking share away from somebody else. And what I was reading earlier is that while Telkom is increasing 9% in prepaid, which is exactly what we're talking about, Vodacom, which has the largest base, still experiencing a 7.4% decline as well. So they're eating each other's lunch.
Yeah, because so you've got a population, right? So you can only have so many prepaid cards. But then I would think the competition would move to postpaid. That's more lucrative. That's where we need to demand better data prices, not only in prepaid. That's where we need to have competition. In fiber, we need to have homes that are not connected being connected. So no, there's a huge scope here for competition, which is good for us all. And that's where we wrap up the number. More than 25 million subscribers is what Telkom has as of its